Welcome to the BNI Knox podcast with your host, Andy Brassfield. I'm the Executive Director for the Knoxville, Tennessee region. And today we have on the podcast with us Jeff Jetter. And Jeff is a BNI Director Consultant. He's also with Allstate. And we're happy to have Jeff on the phone today. How's it going, Jeff?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and there's something that specific that I wanted to talk to you about today. But before I get to that, let's find out a little bit more about you and your business and how you got involved with BNI. So help me out here. Take it and run for a minute.
Well, several years ago, I got into the insurance business, financial services. So I was in life insurance and looking at doing some financial planning as it revolves around life insurance licenses. And so, of course, there's a lot of prospecting involved there, and looked into ways to meet people and found myself at a BNI chapter. I was invited. I can't even remember who invited me. I think it was one of my colleagues in the office had recently joined a chapter and was very excited about the potential for meeting new people and getting referrals. So I started checking it out, and I visited a couple chapters. And as you know, Andy, that financial services and life insurance, that's a tough seat to find.
Yeah.
So I ended up through that process in visiting a couple of those chapters, ended up meeting Judy Householder. She got me in touch with another fellow who was looking to build a chapter in South Knoxville, and thought that the two of us might be a good seed to get a chapter started in South Knoxville. And we did that a little over 4 years ago now, and we launched the Sono chapter about 3 years ago after Mike King and I got together and decided we were going to build a chapter. So that's how I got involved in BNI. As far as my practice, I've been growing and developing professionally. So in addition to my life insurance licenses, I also have health. I sell annuities. I've got my securities licenses, my Series 7 and 66. So I am a all grown up financial planner now.
You've been busy.
I've been busy, yeah. And it really has been a great few years. And I do owe a lot of both the financial success that I've had, as well as some of the professional development. A lot goes to some of the mentors I've developed in BNI, some of the education that's been available through BNI, and of course the networking and meeting people.
Fantastic. I love to hear you talking about building chapters, but I'm curious to know about a story that you told me, and I have been sharing this story a lot at Member Success Program and at other places. And it's the story of 2017, when we came out of 2017 into 2018, and you looked back on the year. Do you remember that story?
I do, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm in the process of updating that and getting our 2018 revenue numbers together, and they're going to be very similar. But the story I think you're talking about is I went back and I did a revenue analysis. I wanted to see what kind of revenue I was generating through and with BNI versus what kind of revenue I was generating outside of BNI. And not necessarily a return on investment analysis, more of a return on involvement, because there is, along with the small financial commitment each year with our membership fees and that sort of thing, there's also the commitment of time. And we've
Right.
got to take that into consideration. And well, overwhelmingly, my story points to the success I've had in BNI. So what I did was I did that revenue analysis, and I found out that a little over a third, almost 40%, it was in the high 30s, about 38 to 40% of my revenue came directly from referrals, traditional referrals that I would get mostly from my chapter members. Every now and then somebody from another chapter would refer some business to me, either themselves or a friend or family member. But most of that 38% of my revenue in 2017 was generated by referrals within the chapter. Now, if the story ended there, that's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so almost 40% of my revenue came directly from referrals that I could track back to the members of my chapter. But it goes on from there, in that one of the lessons I learned very early was all those visitors and substitutes that come in, even guests that come in and visit our chapter, those are contacts too. Somebody's taken the time to introduce those folks to me, and why not take advantage of that? Why go out and meet, spend time and effort meeting new people when I've got somebody in the room? So I would make it a rule to follow up with every visitor and every guest that visited the chapter, regardless if they may have said, I don't think I'm going to join. It doesn't seem like it's right for me. The timing's off, the location's off, whatever it is, they've decided not to join. Well, that didn't mean that I couldn't go grab a cup of coffee with them and help them grow their business and see if they could help grow mine. And it turned out that right at a low 30%, about 32%, so almost another third of my business came directly from that. So 2/3 of my business, about 67 to 70% of my business came from BNI. And if you break that up, half of it came from referrals within my chapter, half of it came from visitors that I followed up with.
That's fantastic. You're right. At the first column, 38 to 40% coming directly from referrals. That's a fantastic number. But I have to tell you that I'm even more impressed by that number of a third of your business coming from visitors, subs, and guests who never joined your chapter. So I use that example a lot, when I'm teaching about follow up. One of the things that I've learned about you.
Well, I wanted just to interject. Somebody said, "Yeah, that was a while ago." We're rolling into tax season now. Everybody's looking at their revenue for 2018, and I haven't gotten the specific numbers yet. But as I put that information together, it looks like it's going to be very similar. It looks like about a third of my business is going to come from folks that I followed up with who decided not to join. About a third from referrals within the chapter and a couple outside. And then a third of my business is organic, came outside of the BNI world.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your follow-up system, because I know you a little bit, and I know you to be an organized fella, and so I want to hear a little bit about your follow-up system. When you have a visitor, sub, or guest come through your chapter, what do you do next?
Well, we want to leave that in the hands of the committees that are responsible for that. I was for a good bit of my time in 2017 specifically, I was the vice president of the chapter. Excuse me. And but so most of the formal follow-up would be from first the president thanking a visitor for coming, and then of course the visitor host committee, as the visitor host coordinator assigns those responsibilities to do a diligent follow-up, let folks know that we were happy to have them there, see if we can answer any questions, see if we can overcome any specific objections they may have. All part of that conversion process or sales process to see if they're interested in joining.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in the rule books that says any member can't reach out to a visitor. I mean, for all intents and purposes, whoever invited that visitor intended for everyone in that room to meet them. So I would always follow up with, usually about a week after, and find out, I'd like to get together and learn a little bit more about your business. And it was really that simple. And folks that are looking to meet people, which is why they came to a BNI chapter in the first place, are usually up for that. So we go grab a cup of coffee. I learn a little bit more about their business, and invariably, the whole philosophy of giver's gain is if I'm sitting down with someone and I say, tell me about your business, what can I do to help you grow? Who would you like to meet? Well, 99 times out of 100, that person's going to ask those same questions back.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's giver's gain for sure. So let me ask you this. You said usually within a week you'll follow up, make contact. Let's get specific. We talking phone calls, emails, what?
Well, typically, I want to get a feel for my visitor host committee first. I want to let them do what they do, and we had a pretty strict process. We had the visitor host team over there had a pretty rigid process. We wanted either the day of the meeting or the next day for the president to reach out and say thank you for coming, and then we had a series of follow-ups behind that, and there were assignments for that. So there was a day after, 2 days after, 3 days after. And it was all within that first week. And as vice president, I was privy to keeping abreast of that communication. I was copied on all that communication, so I kind of saw how the conversation would go. And if it looked like they were not leaning towards joining, well, then I'd wait until the process sort of exhausted it, and then I would reach out and say, "Hey, we met last week at BNI. You know, I'm the financial guy. I'd love to sit down and grab a cup of coffee and see if I can answer any questions for you. But more importantly, I'd like to learn more about what it is you do and how I can help you grow your business."
I love it. I mean, that is textbook, you know. And so then,
a lot easier than most people think.
Yeah.
Most people think there's you've got to have this great script or you've got to have it all worked out. Where really I found just call and say, "Hey, want to go grab a cup of coffee?" Usually works pretty well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think sometimes we have this fear of rejection, or maybe even a fear of embarrassing ourselves somehow, and that can stop us from dialing the phone or even sending an email. Which, by the way, do you have a preferred method, or do you customize it according to what you feel the visitor, guest, or sub prefers? And I'm talking about as far as the follow up is concerned. Do you call them, email them, what?
Almost always, I'll make that a phone call. The reason is I want to talk to. We get a lot of emails. I get a lot of emails. Some of them I even read. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but we get so many emails that somebody else saying, "Hey, I want some of your time" via email. That can often get deleted. I'd much rather reach out to them, especially if they left their cell phone. If they put it on the visitor sign-in sheet, or if they signed in originally with their cell phone, that means they're willing to take a call. And so I just reach out via cell phone. I'm not trying to sell them anything. Like I said, the purpose of my visit is to find out about their business, not to go pitch them mine. If I'm walking in there with the intention of a sales pitch, one, they're going to be disappointed, and I'm probably going to get frustrated with the results. But if I go in there thinking, "Hey, you obviously came wanting to build your business. How can I help you do that, either in BNI or not in BNI?" Then again, it goes to that giver's gain.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. One of the things that you said is very interesting. First of all, you talked about letting the visitor host process play out, the follow-up system. You kind of give that a minute to play out, and then roughly a week after they visited your chapter, sometimes more, sometimes less, then you're following up by phone. And here's the technique that I heard you use. Hey, we met last week at BNI, and then that was basically the last time you had to mention BNI, because you weren't calling them to sell them on BNI. You weren't calling them to sell them on anything. But
no,
you only mentioned BNI as a point of reference. This is where we met. Now let's pick it up and move forward. All right, and from that moment on, this is all about giver's gain, and how can you help them, and the law of reciprocity will come back and they will help you. But it's not about, are you going to join BNI? Are you going to be there next week? I'd love to talk to you at the meeting next week if you're going to be there. It wasn't any of that kind of stuff, right?
None of it. Like I said, that now there were occasions where I was asked to participate on that visitor host set of responsibilities, in which case then of course I would. But if we had the pieces in place for the visitor host team to accomplish their objectives, then the purpose of my call was simply to see if I could help them grow their business.
Absolutely. So, do you think every member should try to make these types of connections with the visitor subs and guests?
Well, here's the unique thing about that. Some people would say, oh, they're going to get beat up and saturated, bombarded by people in BNI. If that would be true if we were all calling saying, hey, where's your check? Hey, where's your application? Hey, come join our chapter. Yeah. But if we let those 2 to 4 people, whatever the process is in your chapter, if we let them take those responsibilities, and then every single member of the chapter reached out over the next 2 weeks to that visitor, guest, or substitute with the one intention of, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you, your business, and how I could help you. If we all did that, the visitor host team wouldn't have to sell. They'd be like, are you kidding? I got 18 people who want to help me grow my business. I got 27 people who want to help me grow my business. I have 42 people who want to help me grow my business. I'd be a fool not to join.
Absolutely.
So no, I don't think it would become a nuisance to them as long as we go in with the right motivation.
Well, and the motivation is something that I think is important. I feel that there must be a reason why that all of our members don't do this. You know, so it goes back to motivation, education, you know, and the training that someone might need. It seems like this kind of came natural for you, but I feel that you probably had a lot of training, you know, in your career that led you to this ability, right?
Well, yeah, and quite the contrary. It didn't come natural at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of my sales training and sales experience is all consultative selling, which is, of course, finding the need of the client and then trying to offer a solution rather than trying to sell a product or sell a widget. So a lot of my training is in consultative sales. But one of the things I learned early on in BNI, and this is something I didn't learn in any of my corporate sales training, was if I go in with that giver's gain, magic things will happen. I know that sounds ridiculous. You can't say that sales success is based on magic, but a little bit it is. And what I mean by that is if I'm going in with the objective to sell something, or if I'm going in with my agenda, very rarely am I listening. And if I go in and the first thing and really only thing on my agenda is, how can I help you? That turns into a conversation. It identifies a lot of those needs in both directions. So they're going to start to identify problems that they have. And if I can offer solutions, whether in or out of my industry, their biggest problem might be that they're going through a rough divorce. And I say, you know what? I've got an attorney I'd like you to meet. That could be the level of solution that I provide, introducing them to someone else.
So why don't more of our members follow up with visitors and substitutes, you know, to establish these types of connections?
That's an excellent question. I think a lot of it is agenda driven. We have so much going on in so many different areas of our professional and personal life that we think by doing that, we're sacrificing something. And I think that's the biggest thing. And we hear it all the time. I don't have time to invite visitors. I don't have time to follow up because there's this feeling of we're losing something else if we do that. Whereas I think people who are more successful with it don't think of it as a sacrifice. They think of it as an opportunity. Well, I don't have to be prospecting if I go follow up with a guy I've already met. So I don't have to. I'd much rather go talk to someone that I got an introduction to at this week's meeting than go call somebody off a billboard or go through my fishbowl of business cards from the last Schmoozapalooza.
So prospecting is a key word there. I know that some of our members, like yourself, are actively involved in prospecting, on a regular basis in their business. But we also have other members that, they don't prospect at all for a variety of reasons, I would say, depending on the type of industry they're in and the makeup of their own business. Often I think that we have technicians who are members of our chapters, and technicians can be business owners, or employees. Nonetheless, often when this type of a member is at their BNI meeting, in the back of their mind, they're thinking about, well, I've got to get to this service call. I've got to go and install a product, this type of thing. So I think that they're not used to the concept of prospecting. Do you think maybe we could offer some more insight to that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to understand why you're in BNI in the first place. If you're not in an industry, business, or position to where you are encouraged, incentivized, or paid to grow business, well, then that might be a time to reevaluate, because that is the purpose of BNI. We're there. BNI will build your book of business. We're book builders. We're going to help expand some of the kids won't know what this is, but expand your Rolodex.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to have more people that we can reach out to with a warmer set of circumstances. If you're a service tech or a technician, as you described, if you run out of people to service, well, the business is over. You've always got to be looking for new people to meet, new people to either sell product, service, or concept to. If we're not growing, we're dying.
Yeah, absolutely. So what role do you think that membership committees play in helping their chapter and members to make sure that we do have the right person in that seat? In other words, the person that I described arbitrarily, is concerned about their next service call. If that's not the right person, is that the membership committee's role, and how so?
Well, really it is. The best way to evaluate that is to go through the membership application process and do it correctly. Another great opportunity to catch that is in that first year of membership. So perhaps we did let somebody in and they're not really all that interested in growing their business, and they're thinking of this as more of an obligation rather than an opportunity. That's a great chance for our mentor coordinator and our membership committee to keep track of that guy or gal and find out, how's your experience going. We can do that in a lot of different ways. There are coaching tools available all throughout BNI Connect that we can identify and find out, well, are there ways we can make your experience better?
That's right. Yeah, definitely on the interview side, for example, a clue could be, well, my boss told me that I needed to join here, something like that. So
that can still work, though. We've got to find out why the boss wants them in there. If the boss wants them in there to get referrals, we've got the wrong mentality. because that is not a giver's gain, that's a taker's take. And
That's
so
right.
if they're coming in with that, well, my boss told me to come so I could get 2 referrals a month. We need to do some, we don't need to eliminate the candidate. We need to see if we could, maybe coming in to get 2 referrals isn't the best way to look at this. Maybe coming in to be part of a team, develop and strengthen a sales force for you. Maybe that's the way to look at this. In which case they could end up being a great, fantastic member.
That's right. It's not like an immediate, well, no, you're not a good fit. I mean, what we're talking about here is during the interview process with a new applicant at your chapter, that's where the membership committee really should shine. And they should be digging deep and finding out, what is the candidate's understanding? And do we need to do a little bit of education here, to get a clear picture of what we both expect out of this, And I'm just saying that I know that we have, from time to time, we have chapters. I mean, I've been in them where this is the case, hey, we need an electrician in our chapter. And so an electrician shows up and we're like, yeah. Let's get the application. All right, we got the application. How fast can we get it processed? And let's get him approved. Just because he's an electrician and we have referrals, that we need a good electrician to pass our referrals to. And so I'm just saying that we can slow that process down by just a tiny bit and take the time to follow the system. Sometimes I find that membership committee members don't even realize that in the leadership team manual that there is a script for interviewing applicants to your chapter. Now, we're not necessarily suggesting that you read the script verbatim, use it as a guideline, but a lot of times they don't even realize, that there's that much detail of assistance to help choose the right people to get into your chapter. So, Jeff, this has been fantastic. We're just about out of time. And so before we move to the closing, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I want to put a little punctuation mark on what you had just said too, Andy. When we go through that process, I think too often our membership committee and our chapters at large, and I've done it too. I've tried to build chapters, and we've had this air of desperation. We need the application. We need the new member. And if we flip that just a little bit, and we think we have an opening in our fantastic organization, we've got an opening for an electrician. Do you want it? And if so, you've got to apply for it.
There
and
you
if
go.
we change, just flip that a little bit to, hey, we're going to decide whether we're going to take you, not please, please, please join.
Yes, that is so true. Just a little bit of a mindset shift, just a little bit of a shift in the way we approach it. It can make all the difference in the world. So really. Thank you so much for joining me today. This story of yours is one that again, I have shared it time and time again, and I'm definitely looking forward to receiving an update. So, when you conclude your revenue analysis, I'd love to hear if things are still about the same or if there's been any change.
Okay. I'll get those numbers over to you when we get them done.
All right. Fantastic. Well, listen, the next Member Success Program class is coming up on Monday, March the 11th, and that's at Tennessee State Bank in Knoxville. Remember, we like for our members to attend at least once a year, and new members, of course, within the first 60 days of their membership. On March the 12th is the Smoozapalooza, and this is the Knoxville Chamber's big networking event. We do have representation planned on being there. By the way, Jeff, I don't know if you're available to be there to help us work the booth or not, but I would invite you to do that. Maybe we can talk offline. So remember Smoozapalooza. And look for that with the Knox Chamber. But BNI Knoxville will have a booth there, and we'd love for you to come by and help us to promote visiting a chapter. So as we're going into Smoozapalooza, we do have a focus, a goal, and that is to get people to visit a chapter. So we're looking forward to that. And member Extravaganza 2019 is just around the corner, April through May. And remember the contest that is involved there. You could win a cruise to the Bahamas with Dr. Ivan Meisner and several hundred other new BNI friends. So that's going to be a big deal. And we're talking about it this early because we need our chapters to schedule their visitor days. So I'm encouraging our directors to get with the chapters. I'm encouraging leadership team members to get with their directors and schedule visitor days. And to do a visitor day right, we need to have it on the calendar a minimum of 45 days in advance. So that means that now is the time for us to put them on the calendar for Member Extravaganza 2019. We're really excited about that. And Jeff, thanks again. And this is Andy. This is Andy Brassfield, your BNI Knoxville, Tennessee Region Executive Director, and signing off another episode of BNI Knox Podcast. Thanks for listening, and y'all have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.